What's going on, everyone? Preston Stewart and Sayer Payne with War Stories, joined today by Dave Berkenfield. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time here.
Yeah, super excited, and appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, of course. We're definitely going to get into, I want to hear a lot about Be the One and how you're involved with that. But if you don't mind, can you just give a quick background on yourself, who you are, where you're coming from, even how you got involved with this organization?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, the subject really, like you'd mentioned, Be the One. And, it is September suicide awareness and really talking about veteran suicide. But, before we get into that, so I was in the Navy for 25 years. I retired a few years ago. Prior to that, I grew up in Wyoming, actually just outside of Jackson Hole, in Jackson Hole and outside of Jackson Hole. And then was born in San Diego, actually. So, I've been all over. Live in Indianapolis now and work for Chip Ganassi Racing. It's if you're not a motorsports fan, it's one of motorsports royalty, really, is who Chip is. He was a driver, and we've won a lot of championships here in a bunch of different series. So that's our tie-in with the American Legion. We have them as a great partner in our IndyCar series, and I'm one of the team managers here. So I'm fortunate. I got a great run in the Navy and had an ability and a chance to do a lot of great stuff, and then jumped right into it. I sort of jokingly say I jumped from one frying pan right into another one with zero break. And I talk to people that retired and then now they're just hanging out and fly fishing, and I'm like, oh boy, I'm super jealous at times, and then at other times I'm really excited. So yeah, it's all good.
I was gonna say, it's kind of a cool part about the military. I guess you get it. I don't know when you joined. We can get to that, but I'm guessing you joined relatively young, because you look young now and you're starting a second career after retiring. I always like that. Somebody's like 42 and they're starting something fresh. I think that's awesome.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. I mean, and I always knew that was going to happen. I actually went to Army boot camp in Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
Yeah, I know that game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I went there when I was 17. So,
oh, really?
You like think about, and I think I sort of tell that story now. And I think about, I have twin boy and girl twins that are, 14, and I'm like, wow, that's really close to how old they are. And I'm thinking, it was pretty wild to go there at 17 and then go back and finish my high school career. Right. So like, in between I think it was my junior and senior year, went to boot camp in Fort Sill. And then after graduating, went back to Fort Sill for AIT. And it's just sort of funny. I think about like what kids are doing in the summer now and what my kids are doing, and grinding at boot camp. I was like, what was I thinking? But now I look back on it and say, I was so super blessed and lucky. And, I did 25 years of service and getting, just like you stated, getting ready to start a second career. And, now being, 2+ years into it. Yeah, it's been really good.
So it sounds like you then kind of recently retired, I guess, last couple of years.
Yeah, about 2 years ago.
What year were you 17 then? What year was the boot camp?
I went to boot camp in 96, 95, maybe.
You said that was National Guard? Was
That's
the
right.
like split option? Were you college bound, or like what was?
No,
what
yeah,
made you do it?
it was split. So it was because it was coming from a National Guard unit, and it was the Wyoming Army National Guard with an artillery unit there. And because I was so young, I had to go finish high school, right? So it was split. I don't remember what it was, but yeah, it wasn't like OSUT, right, or one station unit training.
Right.
It was like, I'm trying to pull that out of my dark recesses of my memory now, but yeah, it was boot camp. And then I went back when I graduated. I went back the following year and went to artillery school. So it was a 13 Bravo.
Did you have
I'm
like
13? Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
field artillery
he
guy,
is
so
a
I've
field
been out
artillery
there.
officer right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Did you have
again,
like family in the military? That's what I was wondering. Like, you're from Wyoming, but you were born in San Diego. Is there a tie there with Navy?
Yeah, so there is some tie there, and it really is around service for sure. So my grandfather was a Navy surgeon in Korea, And so I grew up on those like wild, Korean war stories. And, he's still alive now, and I'm incredibly close to my grandfather. He's,
That's awesome.
97 or something and still kicking
wow.
around, ornery as hell. His like stand-up massage chair just died the other day, and he was all pissed off because of how expensive the new ones are, right? Like, it's just classic. But he was a surgeon, and hearing all his wild stories about operating on people, real close to the front lines with the Chinese, shelling them, and just crazy things. And then my mom and dad met. Actually, my dad was part of the San Diego Mountain Rescue Team in San Diego.
Wow.
And sort of an alpinist, if you will. And my mom grew up sailing, like competitively sailing. And they met on a C-130 flying down to Mexico with the San Diego Mountain Rescue Team, going to a rescue down in the Mexican volcanoes. And so they met there, and sort of the rest is history. But a bunch of my dad's friends were SEALs. And so I grew up on, I call them my bastard uncles. And so, I still have really tight friendships with those guys, and they're definitely, my dad's best friends, and they've chased me through my career, and I've chased them through their career. And so my dad never was in the military, but he was in the National Park Service and the Forest Service and BLM, definitely government service. He was a head climbing ranger in Grand Teton National Park. So growing up skiing and climbing and, river rafting and, doing that whole thing. And just seeing my grandfather, my dad, my mom was a tracker for the Border Patrol for a while for lost kids. And, so it's just like this whole thing. And so for me, college wasn't calling, I guess. Like,
sure.
Adventure was calling. Like, I wanted to be a hardy boy.
Yeah.
And so it was what can I do to be part of something bigger? What can I do to get outside, to, be surrounded by interesting people and travel? And it was the military for me. So that was the Army, and just sort of, but here's the funny thing about that is I knew I wanted to be a SEAL, but I wasn't sure I wanted the military authoritism. Right.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh boy, how am I going to do this? Right? Like, I'm half hippie out of Jackson Hole, skiing and mountain biking.
Yeah.
And then, so I actually, when I look back on it, I think I made a pretty good decision. I was like, you know what? I'll join the National Guard. I'll see how this goes. If it goes okay, then I'll get out of the Army and join the Navy, and I'll chase my dream. And that's what I did. And it was a little bit harder getting out of the Army and getting to buds than I thought it was, but then I thought it would be. When you're in Wyoming and you're just a kid, you're like, oh, it's just the Army, I'll just transfer. And it's not a big deal. It's
walk next door.
Navy, Air Force, Marines, it's all the same thing. I mean, you don't know any better. So, but
what year was that? What year did you make that transfer? Because I imagine if it was any time after September 2001, it was probably getting a little dicey. Everybody.
Yeah, no, it was prior to that. So yeah, I mean, so I went to Army boot camp, Army artillery school, and then I came back to Wyoming, and I was like checked into my unit, and I was like immediately, okay, I need something a little bit bigger here.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
It was, that would have been like 97, late 97 or maybe 96. But yeah, so I it's one of those funny stories where I was the honor grad at artillery school. And so I had lunch with some lieutenant colonel, and he gave me his business card, and he's like, if you ever need anything, just call me. And I remember getting back and checking into my unit and being like, okay, yeah, it's time to call him. I want to be a SEAL, not a 13 Bravo.
Probably not the call he was expecting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I called him and said, hey, do you remember me? And he goes, yeah, I remember you. What can I help you with? And I was like, well, I want to get out of the Army. And he's like, that's not what I had in mind. Right. And so he tried to convince me to go to Rangers or Special Forces. I told him what I wanted to do. And I mean, he's doing his due diligence, right? But at the end of the day, he said, you know what, I'll make you a deal. You call me in 6 months or 8 months or whatever it was, and I'm going to call your commander and make sure you did a good job, and I'll do what I can for you. And I just busted my ass for the next 6 months. And, you know, I actually got a gun, or I was getting ready to get a gun, you know, they were corporal type action. And then he helped me out, and I got a conditional release that I had to join the Navy immediately. And so, you know, the Navy recruiters, knowing what I know now, I probably could have just got orders to BUD/S, but the Navy recruiters were like, no, you're going to Navy boot camp. So I then went to Navy boot camp, right? So I'm like, Navy boot camp. And I was like, man, I'm done with these boot camps. Like, this is like crazy.
And
then, like, you know, boot camp, AIT, and then Navy boot camp all within like 20 months. Right.
Oh, wow.
And then it was like, for me, it was what's going to get me the fastest way to BUD/S. And that was Seaman Apprentice School, which is 2 weeks long. And you know, you're a deck sailor. And I got a lot of respect for deck sailors, but if you know, you're around Navy people, you know what the deck sailor means. It's like, they're the undesignated guys. They didn't go to an A school. They're the ones grinding the paint and painting and doing the bosuns. Usually they turn into bosun's mates. And, you know, they're the crusty 40-year-old, you know, E5 bosun's mate type guys. Cause, you know, it's a hard life, you know, hold fast on your knuckles type deal. And, but I didn't know any better. So I was like, yeah, that'll get me to BUD/S quick. And then when they gave me my orders, the orders actually were not to BUD/S. They were to the USS Tarawa as an undesignated deck seaman with a quick TAD in BUD/S, with no expectation that I would ever make it. Right.
All right. Well,
Interesting.
Yeah, that was just how they cut orders at that point. And then I went to BUD/S in class 220 and graduated with 220, you know, 6 months later. With there was 18 of us original guys, and then checked into SEAL Team 1 quickly after that. So yeah.
Are those teams geographically split up? Like, I'm more familiar with the Army Special Forces.
Yeah, they used to be. They you know, pre 9/11. So that was pre 9/11, and also pre what was called Force 21, which was in you know, that was like when they were reorganizing, you know, 21st century SEAL teams type deal. And at the time, they were geographically oriented per coast, if you will. So on the West Coast, which was 1, 3, and 5 at the time, SEAL Team 1 was the, you know, historic jungle warfare team.
Okay.
And sort of lots, you know, Vietnam in the early days and all of that. And then SEAL Team 3 was the desert, you know, group. And SEAL Team 5 was the winter warfare and mountain group. And obviously we did lots of, you know, cross training, but, you know, pre 9/11, I did, you know, a lot of deployments, just Southeast Asia and jungles. It was really Southeast Asia. It wasn't necessarily a jungle team. It was just Southeast Asia. It just happens to be most of Southeast Asia's jungles. Right?
Can you describe sort of that world, right, of the 90s, you know, being a young man in that time frame of sort of world peace, right? Because it's like post-Soviet collapse, pre 9/11, pre-USS Cole even. So like, who are the bad guys? You know, there's adventure in the world, sure, but like, who's the bad guys in that sense of like, I don't want to say purpose, but like, what's the point of the job at that point? Because it was just a different world back then.
Yeah, that's a good question, because that whole sort of pre 9/11 frogman, pre 9/11 community, you know, and we were on like the tail end of it for the SEAL teams. Vietnam was like the big determining factor, right? Like in the early days of the community, right? In the 60s. And then before, so like the community's war teeth were cut in Vietnam. And then there's this whole Cold War SEAL thing where lots and lots of interesting things were done, but they were like sort of in the gray black world. They're, getting cut to the agency and doing beach reconnaissances for the Bay of Pigs type, just wild stories. But you sort of hear, when you're growing up in that sort of generation, you hear like whispers of it, right? Or I remember one of my senior chiefs at the time, pre 9/11, had a Bronze Star, right? And no one knew how he got it.
Oh,
and it would be like, dude, that's crazy. Like, how did he get it? Right. And, I think he probably got it as a SDV guy, like doing some squirrely stuff in a sealed delivery vehicle. But, it's like our master chiefs at the time were all Vietnam guys, for the most.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And so, immediate action drills and training were very Vietnam focused, jungle focused. The things that we were doing, I think I did 2 deployments before 9/11. It was a lot of foreign internal defense, lots of training, training Sri Lankans and Filipinos and Thai SEALs and, working with the Australians, and just lots and lots of training. But growing up as a young man there, I mean, I was like young, I didn't turn 21 until my second platoon, and there's lots of guys that do that. And so it was, it's a good way to grow up. I mean, it's a crazy way to grow up, but like the level of responsibility, and you're pretty much like, your dad is replaced by a LPO and, platoon chief and, team leaders. And so you're traveling and, seeing the world and flying on the big jet planes. And, I mean, it's just on submarines, and it's a cool way to grow up for sure. And it really was, it was a lot of that. It was a lot of adventure. It was, of course, we were always hoping for some fire pole, to go up and get called to do something. But at that point, there was not a lot going on. Things like the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka were definitely a threat. The Philippines had quite a bit of terrorist sort of stuff brewing. There was still some drug stuff going on. We weren't involved in any of that, but some of the other teams were. There was things that were definitely floating up, but 9/11 obviously changed all that, right?
And I want to make sure we have plenty of time for Be the One, but I know, again, on the Army side, the special operations community burnout has been a major, major thing over the last 20 years, because you guys were heavily used. And a lot of folks get burnt out in 2, 3, 5 years. You spent essentially the entire GWAT in that organization. Is that a real thing? Burnout, wearing guys down, wearing units down?
Yeah, for sure. When I retired, my swim buddy and buds, so we went through training together and went all the way up through all the teams together, right? And spent a lot of time together, lots of deployments together. You're talking 20 deployments, 20 plus deployments, right?
Shorter, which are not, so people know it's not a year each, right?
Exactly. Yes. Anywhere, for us, it would be anywhere between, our general deployments are somewhere around 6 months, but
still, geez,
it's short.
That's longer than I thought it would be, to be honest.
Yeah, it was, I've done them, when I say 20, it's probably, a third of those at 6 months, a third of those at 4 months, and a third of those at 3 months, something like that.
Sure.
I'd lose count at 4. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even count.
Yeah.
It's just
around be a blur.
Around 20. But after I was getting ready to retire, and one of my buddies and I were sitting there and laughing at our grouchy old master chiefs from SEAL Team 1 that were always pissed off, right? Mm-hmm. And then we were standing there laughing and being like, yeah, I think that's us right now. So, I think that your comment on the burnout, it's definitely there. I mean, it's definitely there, but in at least our community, it's, guys really want to be there. And as long as they're doing good work, and they're busy and they're employed and they're their chain of command is advocating for them, then that motivation level stays pretty darn high. And that's why you have people that are in for 20, 25, 30 years, right, in those communities. I mean, it's a 30-year guy is not an uncommon thing. I mean, I was 25 and I felt like I was there wasn't a bunch of us from my class left. There was probably less than 6 out of 18 that were still in.
That's still a lot.
That's a
if you think
lot.
about that,
Yeah,
that's a
it
lot,
sure is.
right?
Yeah.
So,
That's
but it is a thing. And then you take onto it just sort of combat burnout and just repeated deployments. And then, the community lost a lot of guys over the years, right? Like it touches everyone. That community's, let's call it 3,000 people. You lose 50 people or 60 people and 70 people in 20 years. Like the likelihood of knowing a number of them is significant. And then we lost, the extortion helicopter crash, we lost 30 in one day.
Yeah.
Right. And those challenges are obviously, that affects a whole community. That's like wives, kids, all of a sudden the daycare down the street, has 3 kids in it that are, don't have their dad type deal. I mean, that is a far reaching thing in a community that small, for sure. And I'm sure it is in other small knit units, whether it's, Army units or Marine Corps units, it's all the same. But for us, it was pretty tight, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think an Army brigade combat team is 3,000 to 4,000, right? So when somebody is lost there, you can make a similar argument, right? They're all from the same community. They're all like physical community. They're all from Fort Campbell. They're all from Fort Bragg. But those 4,000 would rotate home and they might not go back for another 12, 18, 24 months. When you're saying 3,000, some, X number of those are always in harm's way over the last 20 years. So a casualty could pop up any day. That wasn't the case for conventional units, if you will.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, that's the NSW had people deployed in every theater constantly. It's just how the business was, right? So it would be, I remember a couple different times, like literally sitting in my house and, getting a phone call that we lost somebody and having to tell my wife at the time, she knows his wife, or being on a training trip with the guys and getting a phone call that we lost 2 guys, or being on actual, my 18-man troop in 2008, we lost 3 guys, right? So it's like, those are big numbers. I've been at memorials, literally memorials, when we're getting texts that we had guys died in a parachute accident, right? So you're like, holy shit, that guy's wife is standing right there helping with this other guy's wife, and like this is going to come full circle here in about 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. So I think your tie-in there on that stuff is, I think that the community and the SEAL community does have a problem with veterans who, like, with suicide. We've had our issues, for sure, right? Like, going full circle here to the conversation.
Yeah.
We've lost more people than I care to admit. I mean, it's a lot, right? When you look at the percentages, and so it touches all of us. I think unless we get sort of a handle on it a little bit, there's probably going to be an uptick unless we really start focusing down on finding some solutions, because that generation is looking at retiring, like right now, right? And so if you look at statistically suicide there, and I'm not professor of psychology here, but I actually spend a lot of time with those guys through this campaign, and transitional periods are one of those indicators, right? Like transitional period, I'm losing a job, moving on, different job, career change, divorce, death, financial change, drug and alcohol stuff, DUIs. I mean, transitional change, whatever it might be. Those are, and so I think over the next 10 years, we're going to see a lot of individual transitional change happening. And so that's scary if you think about it, right? That's a lot of people that are carrying a lot of baggage, 9/11, post 9/11 baggage.
So that's the Be the One campaign is at my glance of it, it seems like a very hands-on approach to try to stem that problem. It's not some big online course or something. It's literally like check in with your buddies.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, it is. And so, I mean, maybe the thing to sort of talk about is what is Be the One? And then why does it have that name? Like, what does it really mean? What is the American Legion trying to do right now? And I think the conversation starts with the American Legion, right? The American Legion, everyone knows it, myself included, as this stereotypical, like brick and mortar hometown bar with a flag outside with, crab boils and $2.50, Miller Lights,
the only bar you can somehow still smoke in. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Bingo hall, basically.
Yeah. 2 shots in a beer. And, and the American Legion understands that. And in a sense, they're trying to change that narrative a little bit. But really the bigger story with the American Legion is that they're one of the largest veteran service organizations out there. They have one of the biggest lobbies in Congress, right? Like, veterans don't know that. The American Legion really was instrumental in getting the GI Bill, right? The first GI Bill, not the post 9/11 GI Bill that like maybe our generation. I'm talking the one that brought veterans home and started America's middle class,
Sure.
right? Like put them in homes, put them in houses, did all that. And so that was them, they were the one that lobbied Congress for it. They're the ones that supported those veterans when they came home. And they did the same thing with Vietnam, with Agent Orange and toxic exposure and all of this. And so every generation, I really like how they have this sort of creed, unspoken creed, that every generation of warriors is going to try to do something for the next generation of warriors, right? And so what is the current American Legion effort? Well, it's veteran suicide, right? Like it is the number one thing that we need to focus on right now. And so, we have as the race organization, Chip Ganassi Racing, we have a commercial partnership, a sponsorship, a deal with the Legion. And part of that was to help raise awareness with this storyline, right? To get it in front of a younger population, to get it more as a national conversation, to get the Be the One race car in the Indianapolis 500 on Memorial Day, right? To get Jimmy Johnson, one of our drivers, doing sort of pieces at prime time, talking about the American Legion and Be the One. And so, for me and how I got involved with it is our chief marketing officer at the time, he's since moved on, but was having a conversation with a man by the name of Dean Kessel, who's the chief marketing officer of the American Legion. And sort of our guy knew some of my story, said, hey, would you be willing to talk to Dean a little bit? And at the time, for me, I really do firmly believe in this quiet professional ethos of our community, even though we're all over prime time right now. It doesn't matter, right? Like I
think I got a trailer for a new SEAL movie coming out, by the way.
Exactly. Right?
Just yesterday.
Yeah.
We'll probably get like 3 or 5x more views, which is why we're putting Navy SEAL in the descriptor.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, exactly. But I really do believe in the what you see here, what you do here, let it stay here when you leave here. And so for me, getting my face, up talking about the Legion. I was like, I'm not really interested in that, right? Like, I don't want to tell my story. But then, it was like, hey, why don't you just talk to Dean? So I sat down with Dean a few times, and he was telling me that, hey, what the story of the Legion, like the real story, not the crab boil story, but the advocacy of veterans. And that resonated with me. And then he was telling me the story about, hey, they want to jump into this veteran suicide and really try to stem it. And for me, that resonated just because I lost my brother. I lost my older brother, not a veteran, but I lost my older brother to suicide. Actually, when I was I had just come home from a deployment, super hard to deal with. It was like it was in 2008. It was a hard deployment already. Lost 3 teammates, come home, go to all those memorials, 3:00 in the morning, get a phone call from Las Vegas PD about my brother. Parents are a wreck. I just had to deal with all these other memorials. So like, I have my hand on how to do it. My parents have no clue, right? Like, so it was okay. Yeah, I'm interested in this. And then our community, and really, I've lost a number of friends, teammates, SEAL teammates to suicide, and it's still happening. I mean, we're losing guys all the time. And so, I thought about it a little bit, and I chewed on it personally. And I came back and I said, Dean, you know what? I'll do anything I can here. So, and it's a little bit of, I think there's, we have this ethos saying, in the absence of leadership, I will lead. And I feel like at times that needs a little bit of fire on it.
Sure.
And so for me, that's where this started. Dean and I had a conversation at one of the Indianapolis Grand Prix races, and his marketing team had put together all these proposals for everything we're going to do, and how do we measure metrics? Because the overwhelming metric that everyone talks about with veteran suicide is 22 a day, right? 17 a day, 22 a day, whatever data you're
which
trying
is
to
crazy.
look at.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's insanity. And so that's not really the story. That's a fact, and that's a data point. But we're trying to, how do you measure success? Like, how do you measure success nationally? Like, what do you do? Like, what do you actually do here? What does the Legion do? Are we asking or Congress for money? Are we doing public service campaigns? Are we going door to door? Like, how do we measure success at the end of the day after we put all this energy into it? And I'm looking at all these PowerPoint presentations and all this really professionally done media work, and sitting across from Dean, and all I can think about the whole time is my brother's face, my teammate's face. And at some point there, it was just like folding all this great shit up and just like slid it across the table at Dean and said, Dean, you're missing the point. All we need to do is save one life, right? And then we have won, and we need to be okay with that. And that was really the start of it. And it has grown. That is Be the One, right? And it really has grown, and it iterated some from that. And so, yeah, it's save one life, but it's also be the one to ask for help. It's also, be the one to reach out and check in on someone. It's actually be the one to get involved, right? Because I think a lot of times that's what's missing, right? Like the question is this is such a big dilemma that we're in, that no one knows what the measure of success is, right? Like, what is a measure of success? Well, like, each individual can be part of the solution here. You just you've got to reach out. And I've seen that, right? Like, I've seen that right now. I mean, I literally have a teammate of mine staying at my house, right? Because his wife they're struggling right now, right? They're struggling, and he almost committed suicide. And guess what? I called his wife, I reached out, I'm talking to him, he's staying at my house, right? And so, I think that just, it resonates with that story, and knowing that each individual can do something resonates. And it is the way that we're going to win this thing. It's going to be one veteran at a time. It's going to be one veteran to veteran at a time. It's going to be one initiative. And so that's it, you know, and the American Legion's all about it. You know, they have a great website with lots of information, betheone.org. The Veterans Administration, I was just actually up in Milwaukee at the National American Legion Convention, and the veterans, chief of the Veterans Administration, director of the Veterans Administration was up there talking about Be the One. This is just going to grow, right? Like, this is just the start of it. You know, we have a long roadmap, but you know, we know we're onto something. We want it to be a national conversation, right? With veterans and without veterans. And frankly, to do that, you need some media, you need some exposure, and you need something that's tangible, and you need a little bit of a catchphrase, right? Like, it has to happen that way. That's how people consume media at this point. So that's it.
What is, you already gave the disclaimer, you're not a psychiatrist. So I'll ask your opinion on this. Like, what the hell is happening? Because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the rate of suicide within the veteran community is substantially higher than the rest of society. But why? Like, what on earth? I know that our warriors have been through a lot in the last 20 years, and the repeated deployments or the stress of IEDs and not knowing where they are. I got it. I can't believe that it is magnitudes worse than what our forefathers went through in Vietnam, in World War II. Like, some of those scenarios were hell on earth.
Yeah.
I can't grasp, in your opinion, I'll say, why is it so much worse today?
Yeah, I think if we knew that, we wouldn't have this problem, right? Yeah. But I mean, my opinion from my experience is it's a sense of community thing. I think that what we're seeing is bonds in combat and bonds in the military. I mean, look at it this way: less than 1% of the military, or less than 1% of the population, joins the military, right? Yep. Those bonds of friendship, those bonds of teammateship, those bonds of warriorship are pretty damn tight, right? And the longer you do that together, the greater they are. And when you experience those experiences, and then all of a sudden they're taken away, or they're lost, or, you know, you don't have them as much anymore, there's a huge void there. And then you compound that void with anything. I mean, you literally compound it with anything. You compound it with financial stressors, any stressor, financial stressor, alcohol stressors, family stressors, relationship stressors, let alone any health stressors, whether it's, you know, health and mental health stressors. And then all of a sudden you just have this, you know, auger in your gut that just won't go away. Right. And it's like, how do you tackle that? You know, and I think you've got to tackle that one piece at a time. Like, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. I mean, we've all heard that story, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's part of the military. But you know, and I think for me, I've seen it both ways. You know, I've seen all those things. You know, I went through a nasty divorce. I had lots of combat stress. You know, I got blown up in 2008. I ate a frag grenade. I broken my back. You know, like, I have lived all of that for sure. And you know, if you look at it as a holistic issue, it's looming. It really is like looming. And experientially for me, it's just, hey, you got to knock down one little piece at a time, right? Like, okay, hey, let's just stop medicating my back injury with Jack Daniels, and let's start going to more physical therapy and surrounding yourself by people that want to do that, and trying to get a sense of purpose in your life, whatever it might be, because you lost that with your loss of the teams, you know? So I think it's a lot of things, and I'm not sure there's one good answer.
I feel like my own sort of thoughts. I got out 10 years ago and I just did 4 years, but like, my personal thought for me was like, I had this naive view of what I thought America was. You know, I listened to all the myths and the growing up in the 90s and stuff and the world peace and our founders and the revolution and all that stuff. And then and I did do ROTC, so, you know, kind of like 8 years in a way, because that was in a microcosm. Those were, you know, that fraternity there. And you're surrounded by such great people, such selfless people. And getting out and really seeing kind of what America is in a lot of ways, which is like, it's real selfish, you know. And that was like, I had a very big sadness, a sense of loss of like, of real identity, really. And it had nothing to do with winning the war on terror or anything like that. It was, and it had nothing to do with wanting to be thanked or a handshake. It was like, now what it is I'm just here, I guess, to make money. You know, that's it. Like that's what everybody's about. And that's just, and I'm just not necessarily about that. And it's hard to have conversations with people when that is all the focus of everything. I mean, that's just everything seemed to be about that, you know. And then at the same time, though, I did get out and I was combat arms. Okay. And you don't get a good trade out of that. Okay. No, it's hard to sell that job. A lot easier if I had a bunch of certifications in some sort of trade. But infantry people, I'm done selling it. I'm just done selling it. The soft skills people, blah, 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 blah. But just coming to that realization where like, well, I didn't have money either. You know, I actually made half of what I made as a captain coming out. And so, and then having a young family and so it is about the money. And so you got to find a way to get the money. And it's this sort of downward spiral. And then maybe you do get the money. And then you're like, what's the point? You know, and it was just this sense of loss and just, I was like grieving. And it wasn't even about my buddies. It wasn't even about myself. And it's also kind of the realization that like, and then the sadness and the anger that if I were to go back in time to where I was in Afghanistan, walking around in Kandahar, and to give myself a future vision of where I was, happily married with healthy, you know, children, in the state I want to live, raising my family as a homeowner. Shame on you for being upset about that. You know what I mean? Like, how could you ever be upset with a situation like that? What if that's not good enough for you? Nothing ever will be. But still having this sort of just a sadness on the inside, you know, and it's real hard to sort of point a finger on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it right on the head there a little bit. It's just that community and that sense of what, you know, greater than self, right? Like if I was going to put it into one phrase, it would be being part of something that is greater than self, and in truly believing that. And I still believe in that. I mean, that's
right.
That's what I mean by, you know, less than 1% of the population joins the military. And I think veterans, you know, it was actually sort of what I closed some of my comments with at the American Legion convention, is that, you know, we had a team leader in the SEAL teams that had a phrase, at what level are you willing to participate? Right? Like, question yourself, at what level are you willing to participate? And every person in the military at one point or another, whether they know it or not, has asked themselves that. And I think that one of the things that I like about this campaign is you get the opportunity to ask yourself that again, right? At what level am I willing to participate? Because that is the question that each one of us needs to ask about veteran suicide. And you have a choice. You're either going to participate or you're not, right? And I hope that each one of us can find part of that sense of belonging with this Be the One campaign, just like with what you're talking about, right? Like you both have seen it, have felt it. You know, you every veteran out there did. Every veteran from every single generation has asked themselves that. But then when they get out, maybe they don't have that sense of purpose. They don't have that reason to participate at a higher level, right? And what's more honorable? What's a better purpose right now than supporting our other veterans? So,
what's cool is I wonder how many people would point to PTS as the primary reason for veteran suicide, post-traumatic stress. But that conversation is somebody's broken or there's something wrong with them. And there's nothing you and I can do about that. If my battle buddy next door has severe PTS, there's really not much that we can do. He's got to work through that, work through treatment, talk to people. But when you frame it as a community question and a community issue, anybody can help with that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And there's so many good organizations out there that we're all associated with in one way, shape, or form that want to do nothing but reach out and help, right? But it's like, how many veterans have actually said, you know what, I think I'm doing okay right now. Maybe I can volunteer for that and help peer to peer, right? Because the peer-to-peer connection is so much stronger than peer to psychologist or peer to doctor or peer to, it's just, it resonates at a much higher level there's opportunity there everywhere, but you actually have to make the phone call. You've got to make the phone call and say, hey, I'm a veteran. I would like to help out. What can I do to help? Right. And sort of tell that story a little bit. And that's what I have found for myself. And it does give you a sense of purpose. I think that's part of this thing too, right? Like it's not only you're reaching out to help other people, but you're getting some love there as well. So it's, it's good.
How can people get involved?
Yeah. So I think the first part is ask yourself that question: at what level do I want to participate? Right. And I hope that the answer is whatever I can, whatever I absolutely can. Right. And then it's, try to educate yourself a little bit, get on betheone.org, figure out, some of that knowledge, get smart on it. And then you got to start getting out there. You got to start getting out there, and you got to make your friends and your teammates aware that you care, right? Like that you're interested. And the worst thing that you can do is wait for a dire situation, right? Like that is, you have built no trust. At that point, you're just like trying to put the fire out, which is important and an important part of this. But at that point, you're just trying to put the fire out. The better storyline is reach out in the good times, right? Reach out in the good times, and it's maybe have some of those awkward conversations about asking people how they're actually doing. And because then what happens is then if someone's actually struggling, which people are, then guess what? They trust and feel comfortable reaching out. They know you care, right? So I think it's a little bit of that. I think that I think it's being smart with how you approach your friends and your teammates. And I'm sure we have all seen interpersonal communications in any community can be pretty challenging, right? The military is pretty rough around the edges. And so, they don't, leaders don't necessarily get interpersonal communication classes right there. And so I think that actually understanding and being honest with some of that, and maybe, being a human, like actually being a human, right? And understanding that humans have human problems. It's not just, tie your fucking boots a little bit tighter and put your head down, get busy.
Drink water.
Yeah. Just drink water. Right. Yeah. So I think that that's part of it, right? Like maybe lowering yourself a little bit and realizing that you don't need to carry a big ass stick all the time.
I think you're in a leadership position, so I'm going to pitch this idea because it's one of mine, to this question that we have, especially with our lower numbers that we have with that 1%. I would like to see an ability, and it kind of goes back to money too, a little bit, but I think it would be a good idea to have, ideally it's DoD sponsored. We don't have to rely on civilian organizations and charity to do this, especially when our government cuts checks out to warlords and crap. When we're handing out this fake monopoly money overseas, it gets really old when you're doing that. But sponsored reunions, because when you're getting out as a young man who's now raising a family, many people are in leadership roles, right? Team leader and above, and all sorts of stuff, all sorts of leaders. And like, you got desires to take care of people, but having company level, I'm talking Army numbers right here, battalion level, I don't know the unit size reunions, but the ability to like have these sponsored reunions, because you can try to schedule one, but not everybody's going to be able to afford a plane ticket, let alone it's already hard for them to get time off because they're working and raising a family and stuff. And to think that when everybody gets out and they just scatter to the four winds across the country, to be able to find a place that's good for all is going to be impossible. And then to think that one person that wants to do it is supposed to sponsor all of that, it's all of these burdens and all these hurdles. I would think an easy solution would be at their base or whatever, and get to hang out with the guys and like have the old gunners showing the new gunners a little thing or two on the 50 or the Mark 19 or whatever it may be. And just shoot the shit, but then also have that time for the guys and gals to sort of be together again, just around the fire and things like that. I just think that, and then you can catch up on life as well, but because at the end of the day, I feel like we know each other in a lot of ways more than our spouses know us and our parents and our best friends growing up, because when you're in situations like that, there's no hiding. True self and true personality is what it is. And that's this part of this, it's like in war and combat, you see the best of humanity and the worst of humanity, both of those sort of things are there, and you'll never know it unless you're there. And, even in, I would say, garrison environments, I can't describe all of that because I did the combat piece too, but I just think that's a big part of this loss that's there. And I wish that there were ways that DoD would fund that, because it sure funds a hell of a lot of other stuff.
What's funny is if you look back on some of the things that they're doing now, and benevolent organizations are doing now for World War II veterans, and flying them to DC for memorials, and they're playing catch up. So they're playing catch up before the population dies, right? Like why do we have to wait? Your comments there sort of made me think about it a little bit. Why do we have to wait until that moment?
Right.
Like, yeah. And there's something to that. I think about when I was on the East Coast, and I flew my grandfather to Virginia Beach, and then I took him up to the Marine Corps Museum, which is absolutely amazing. Absolutely. I have been to all the different museums. I'm a little bit of a history buff. I love it. But that Marine Corps Museum in Quantico there is like, really, really cool. And I took my grandfather through it, and it was one of these surreal moments where we were walking through all the, the early stuff, and, they have a little wing for every little conflict, right? And then we walked into the Korean one, and we walked through it, and I could tell it was resonating with him, right? Like it was really powerful for him. And then we get to this one corner, and he's looking at this picture, and he just starts crying a little bit, and he's like, it's this little tiny picture like that you would never think about, and it was just a road. It was just a road up to the DMZ from one of the bases, right? Like just, and he remembers walking down that road every day, for his whole time in Korea. And I was talking to him about it, and I was like, I am so grateful that I made the decision to bring him here, right? To be able to experience that and, talk to the people there and go through it and have all these conversations. And he sort of, on the drive up there, we're talking about stuff. And so, yeah, Sarah, I think you're onto something there. I'm not sure the government's going to throw down the money for all the 1%, but I'm also not saying that they shouldn't,
Right.
I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, how do you do that? And I think you're right. It should be something at the unit level. I mean, I got here, I'll show you this. I was just sort of jokingly, I got this the other day. And I think that's, I think that, some communities do it and some communities don't do it. And so, this is like
Anniversary. Love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
60 anniversary of the, SEAL Team 1, SEAL Team's 160th anniversary. So, I think that some communities do it, some communities maybe do it better than others. And so it's just, but I do agree with you, those musters, if you will, of the community are valuable for sure.
Well, I like it. Dave, we're wrapping up here. But betheone.org.
That's
Best
correct.
place to
Yeah.
send folks. We'll put that in the description here. But thanks so much for taking the time and for what you're doing with this organization. That's really important. And if there's anything we can do to help, just please let us know.
Yeah, spread the word. Point your guests at it, and let's make it an uprising. Let's do it.
Love it.
Cool.